Hey guys, we're live and we're recording.
Okay. Good evening. I'm not sure if we are we officially starting right now? And the reason I say that is because we don't have any attendees as of now. We've got one that just jumped on. So but we're streaming live now, is that correct?
Yes.
And what I'd like to do is just give a few, just a minute or so for more people attending. It looks like they're jumping on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actively.
It's populating.
Right, I see that now. So again, I wanted to welcome everybody to the meeting and for the third ward. And I just wanted to make sure that we are aware of the participants on the board. And we have Council Member Clay, City Manager Gregory Rose, and Director Cliff Cross, and Gabby is conducting this meeting for us. And she is one of the acting city managers. So again, I wanted to welcome everybody, and I see that more people are joining. I wanted to turn it over to Councilmember Clay to welcome you, and then also we'll proceed with the meeting.
Thank you, Councilman Smotherson. Again, unfortunately, we find ourselves because of COVID in a Zoom meeting format. Both Councilman Smotherson and I are eager to get back to in person. We think that is a lot better for everyone involved. But for now, we're doing the best we can with our technology, and we're thankful for the city team for helping us out with that. On the agenda, we had listed an Olive 170 update, and I do want to frame that a little bit for our attendees in that Director Clifford Cross and the city manager is also on the line as well, Gregory Rose. We'll be framing in terms of what is really the city's role in the Olive 170 construction process. Those of you who have been anywhere near Olive and Woodson or Olive and 170 have undoubtedly seen the demolition work that has been done. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to make clear the city's role, the developer's role, and who you can reach out to if you have questions or concerns. So with that framing, let me go ahead and turn it over to Director Clifford Cross, Director of Community Development, Clifford Cross.
Thank you, Council Member Clay. And unless
and Director Cross, one thing, Councilman Smother, did you say this that our attendees can put questions in the chat?
No, I didn't mention that. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yes, please put questions in the chat because you all are the attendees are all muted.
I do have access to the chat, so I can see the questions that came across. One of them's come across, what is my position? I am the Director of Planning and Development here for the City of University City. And our department covers a lot of the long-range planning activities, but we also monitor and issue permits for any physical construction activities that take place throughout the city. So I think your first question that's really coming to you is what is our role? And what is our role in terms of, I guess, monitoring or being part of the construction process? And really at this point, our role is to review any applicable applications, any permits, any required submittal documents, and ultimately issue a permit. And then as part of that process, we then follow up and ensure that best management practices are followed. I think one of the classic ones is when you're having a demolition, one of the roles we try to do is make sure there's a limitation of dust. And I mean, the reality is you get any construction site, you're going to get some, but we try to limit it in compliance with best management practices. So we monitor that and work with the project manager and the construction team to make sure those are in compliance. So at this point, what we are doing is we are reviewing the applications every phase of the construction process to try to ensure that it is in compliance with our codes. And if not, our role is to follow up with the project manager to identify any of those deficiencies and work with them to make sure those are being met.
Okay, sir. You have also a couple of questions, if you could. And what I'd like Director Cross to answer is skip one question and go straight to how and I'll leave that alone. I'm sorry. Gabby, would you please proceed? I'm sorry. You're muted. Gabby, you're muted. Okay.
Sorry. So the first question is, how and when will Jeffrey Plaza be cleared out?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult one to answer from a staff standpoint. Ultimately, that is going to be between the developer and the individual owner and the tenants as part of their any contract they have and any relocation that they follow. Now, what I can tell you is we can at least gauge when we think they're getting close to doing that, because when they come in to pull their permit, they're under certain timelines that they have to begin to take action on that permit. So if they are coming in and pulling a permit, so to speak, to demolish that particular property, we will know that it is getting close to that point at which time the plaza itself will be vacated. So really, that's a tough question for us to answer in exactly what the time frame is, but we can somewhat gauge it to determine how close they are getting to that point.
We have the question asking to detail an accounting of the $3 million. Do you want to save that for later, council members, or answer that now?
Sure, I would appreciate if Director Cross or our City Manager Rose would answer that. I can add to it, but I wanted to actually have them address that question at this time.
Sure, that's one that I can address. The $3 million, for those of you who may not be familiar with the financial part of the project, upon the sale of the property to Costco, the part of our redevelopment agreement required that the city then receive $3 million for that property that is to be used between RPA 2, and it also can be used for RPA 3 as well. But the council, I think, have indicated that their preference is to use the entire amount for RPA 2. And in addition, there is, as the project evolves and continues to grow, there is an additional $7 million that RPA 2 will receive over the course of the TIF. And so a total of $10 million that will be received altogether for RPA 2, and then there will be $5 million that will be received for RPA 3. With regards to the initial allocation of the $3 million, it's really at this point just sitting in the bank account. I think the mayor and council during their retreat will make some decisions about how they want those funds to be used. There was $15 million that was set aside early on once the funds were received. That is to cover a portion of one of the ACM's salary. I'm saying that hesitantly because I'm not sure if the $15,000 was ever actually used. It certainly was approved for use. But outside of that, so the lion's share of the funding is simply sitting in a bank account waiting for the mayor and council to make some decisions on its use. And we anticipate getting direction regarding the use of those funds. Likely it will start during the retreat of the mayor and council that's scheduled for September 18th.
And let me add a couple of things, City Manager Rose. In terms of allocations, I saw a couple of questions related to that. That won't be decided until there's a decision made about the structure of a steering committee, which will be discussed at the retreat, I believe, on the 18th. And so no decisions have been made yet about allocation. We want to have a process that does include third ward residents in particular in that decision making, and understanding, kind of giving the guidance. The ultimate decision making, of course, resides with the council, and so that doesn't change. But we do want input from citizens as to how this can really work and work effectively for the third ward. So there have been no decisions made on that as of yet.
We have a few. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, before we proceed, I do want to comment on one thing and hopefully answer a question, and that is in reference to the $3 million and what role that plays, meaning there are two allocations. One, we haven't used it for housing. We have not used that. But Mr. Rose, would you explain that part of the agreement is that we do use that for relocation of residents in RPA 1? If you could explain that, sir.
Right, a portion of the funding can be used for relocation assistance. Those individuals that are relocating, whether it's from primarily from RPA 1, they have an interest in relocating in the third ward, then we have a relocation assistance program that where the $3 million is used to assist in that relocation. Also, and that's primarily what it is at this point. But at this point, I believe maybe one, possibly two people have actually taken advantage of the relocation assistance program.
And Gabby can proceed.
Yes. The next question is, which side of Olive will get developed first, the north or the south side?
I can answer that if you'd like. So obviously the primary anchor and most well-known component is the Costco. The pad for the Costco is expected to be delivered to Costco in early 2022. So the north side will be the first side that will be, there's roughly, if I recall, it is roughly a 16-acre site that will house the Costco, and pretty much right where tour prep was, public storage was. And the reason I say that is because they made significant progress and there's quite a bit of it down now. But that's primarily going to be the first phase of the development where the Costco comes in. It's roughly 160,000 square foot store, if I recall, 153 maybe. That's going to be the anchor site. And then there will be some additional retail that will be developed on the north side. And then the south side could potentially have some additional retail and commercial development, which will be determined after the adoption of the final plan for that site. So the answer to the question is the north side, the 16-acre tract where the Costco is, will be the first part of the development on the north side of Olive. Now, that said, I think one of the things that we want to make everyone aware of is you are seeing construction activity on both sides. And the reason for that is you got significant grade differences between the two. So as part of the phasing process and the long-term development, they are moving dirt from one side to the other to be more efficient. So you are going to see land disturbance or grading work on both sides of Olive, but the initial construction of the first building of that development will be the Costco on the north side.
Okay. The next question, if we're going to move forward, is the city helping to relocate the businesses in the redevelopment area to other locations within U City? And follow up, is the city losing any of these businesses to other municipalities?
The businesses relocation is really falling up under a very similar program that we have for residential. We are looking at the businesses as an economic development opportunity. Not all of them, I would say, are equal in the sense that there are some businesses that we likely would not offer the relocation assistance program to. But for those businesses that we do believe are a very good fit for University City, we're pretty aggressive in trying to provide them with assistance. And I know that the developer as well is working with them to identify possible locations. Now, having said that, there may not be a location within University City that will work for every business. And so is it possible that some businesses will end up relocating outside of University City? No question it is. But our preference for those that we think are a good fit for University City, we are certainly working very hard to try and find a place for them.
And may I add to that, if Councilmember Clay, did you have anything on that? If you wanted to,
No, not on that. No.
But being specific, and I do appreciate the city manager Rose with his information, but to be a little more specific, I am aware that there is an Asian restaurant that was part of RPA 1 that has moved to Olivet. I know that Nobu's, I believe, is going to be moving to the Del Mar, to the U City loop. I believe that they are. And also Athletico is moving east temporarily next to Snooks in the Desco building. And so then and the only reason I know about Athletico is I was getting physical therapy there. Was given that information. So I can tell you that very quickly. Thank you. Proceed.
And Ms. Macaluso, in terms of a process for answering questions, because some of the questions aren't necessarily related to this this part of the presentation. So I can kind of help with maybe segmenting the questions, and we can answer those in the more general question and answer section. Okay. So what I'd like to do is maybe turn it back over to Director Cross if he has anything else to add on the the role of the city versus the role of the developer in the process. Let him go through his presentation, then we can come back and address questions.
Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So really there's nothing more to add other than that we are working to ensure that the codes are being met and that the work is being done in accordance to best management practices and the job scopes associated with the individual permits. What I can tell you is they are starting to get close to that point where the demolition is complete, and they will start that land disturbance activity of moving dirt, regrading, prepping the site for the pad, and getting everything in place for the construction of that pad. I think probably one of the biggest concerns that could come up at that point is that could begin the 35 to 40 day phase of the night work that will be associated with the property. And I know Mr. Rose and the council have taken various steps to make sure that minimizes any impact on the neighbors. Us as a staff, we're going to continue to monitor that and make sure that they are in compliance with the terms of that agreement to allow that night for a short period, and also to ensure that it's in compliance with the applicable provisions of the code. We do encourage, anyone, if you do see concerns, reach out to the department, and we would be happy, to look into it and ensure that they are following the requirements of the code. With that, I really don't have anything else to add at this point, but can answer any additional questions that you or your constituents may have at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Clay.
And Ms. Macaluso, I'm going to jump in.
So this I don't know how you would have said. There's a lot of them. So
yeah. So let me. I'm trying to group them in terms of. There are some specific development questions. Well, that's not really related to RPA 1.
Councilmember Clay, I did see what about the lots behind Jeffrey Plaza. That's one that I do recall seeing that may be more to me. So when you have those lots, and if I recall, those are the 3 cul-de-sacs that run behind
Richard Orchard
Elmore
and
Yeah,
Elmore.
Richard, yes, sir. So if you recall, the 4 lots on the west end of each cul-de-sac actually have been acquired and are part of the actual Costco phase of the project. I think ultimately it's going to provide some buffering from what's there. So those are all, I believe those have all already been demolished and are part of the current activity that's going on there. The remaining cul-de-sac lots are going to be part of the next phase of the project, and that's that remaining commercial development that is on the north side of the development. My understanding is, those are going to be acquired and part of the remainder of RPA1 outside of the Costco scope. And I believe the developer has reached out to those individual property owners to move forward with their negotiations for the potential acquisition of those properties that will be in a future phase of that project. So in terms of construction, they are really not part of it right now, outside of the 4 lots on the west side of each of the 3 cul-de-sacs.
Okay, there's another detailed question for Cliff.
Yep.
Are there plans to develop the property on the southeast corner of Olive and McKnight?
If I recall, that is actually, so that's the southeast, that's the gas station or the old gas station. And that is right outside of the edges of RPA1. That said, and Ms. Rose can correct me here, I think that is RPA3 is the strip, commercial strip that runs along Olive Boulevard. So those are not part of this phase or the RPA1 project, but those are parcels that are identified as part of the overlay, so to speak, of future potential projects within RPA3.
And let me address somewhat related. There've been a couple of questions about the steering committee or the task force. At this time, that would be involved in the process of looking at the funds allocated for the third ward. Again, there's a meeting on September 18th where I think the council will come to some final decisions on that. But certainly, Councilman Smotherson and I want to make sure that the third ward voices are represented in this process, and I think our council colleagues are agree with us in principle, but we need to just hammer out these specifics. So I don't have a whole lot to say right now, but we'll know more after the 18th. In terms of,
I think that was the last detailed question. The others were generalized about visioning and different things. There's a last question. If you want to look at.
Go ahead. What's that? What's the question?
It says, what happens if Mr. Brown passes away or dies, and is there a contingency plan to continue with the project?
Yeah, I believe that there is a partner that's involved. So it is not just Novus. And Ms. Macaluso, I will go ahead and take the questions from here, or Councilman Smotherson.
Okay.
Because I think they're more, they're not necessarily on specific things. So
do you want me to scroll up? Or? Okay.
No, I can see it. I can see it. So
Councilmember Clay, can I go ahead and jump in real quick?
Please do.
What I wanted to actually state or address is that, yes, to answer a question in reference to Mr. Rose, you can correct me if I'm wrong. 12,000 was used of the 3 million in reference to the allocation that we received, and that was used for relocation. And I think that was one family that moved into the third ward and they received they received 10,000, and another family that moved back into U City, not necessarily the third ward, received a 2,000 of, and that again is from the $3 million. And yeah, and I'm trying to just answer those questions. So that was used. Now, another question that was asked is that I thought that the developer was supposed to pay for the relocation. No, a part of the agreement was that U City wanted to incentivize the residents in RPA 1 to move back into U City, and that was part of our agreement. Another part of that question, somebody asked the question, are we helping with the businesses? No, that actually is on the developer. And again, Mr. Rose could correct me, but that is on the developer. That's not coming out of the $3 million that was allocated to RPA 2. So, and I'm hoping that addresses that. Mr. Clay, I'll let you go ahead from there.
No, I think you've addressed it. Let me make space. City Manager Rose.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson had indicated. And a couple of things, and part of why this is confusing is because it's coming from two different sources of funding and from two different entities. And so as it relates to the residents, there's a state statute that requires the developer to provide relocation assistance to both residents that are being displaced, as well as businesses that are being displaced as a result of the project. And so, but in addition to that, what the mayor and council decided was that they wanted to incentivize both residents and businesses to continue to live or operate here in University City. And they've got a couple of tools for that. One, certainly for the residents, is the $3 million allocation. Mayor and council could actually use that $3 million as well to incentivize businesses should they desire to do so. There's also another, I'll say, bucket of funding called the Economic Development Retail Sales Tax Fund that could be used, but that is limited just for businesses. And so there are a few funding sources that are available, but the intent, I believe, of the agreement and of the mayor and council was to try and make sure as many residents that were being impacted that wanted to continue to live in University City were able to do so. And secondly, those businesses that they believe were a good fit. And let me just say some of the examples of businesses that they didn't believe was a good fit. Check cashing businesses, for example. I don't know that we would be very aggressive in trying to get them to remain in University City. But that's just an example. But the other types of businesses, certainly they were very interested in retaining those. And so there are a couple of sources that is available to the mayor and council should they want to incentivize them to remain.
It seems like we did get a question, a new question regarding the status of the apartments. I believe that's Briscoe Apartments. I think that's Representative Adams was asking about. So any update that can be provided on that the team may know.
It's still in negotiation between the apartment owners and the developer. There has been some action that was taken for one of the complexes where they could not reach agreement. That may end up going through the judicial process. Certainly we try and avoid that if at all possible, but we'll have to see how that works its way through. But that's really the status at this point.
And just to give some context around what the city manager said, Briscoe Apartments has multiple owners. So that, as you might imagine, has the potential to complicate things. There is a question about the apartments for Midland and Olive, the apartment complex that at one time was proposed. I'm not sure if the city manager, Councilman Smotherson, has information on that.
Well, very quickly, if I can actually say that it looks like the council decided, and again, Mr. Rose can jump in anytime, and the council decided not to go with the plan that was submitted to university to the council. And we decided not to go with that plan and sort of wait on the progress that's being made west of Olive and see where that takes us and see what offers we get later down the line. So no, we did not accept that offer that was sent to the council.
We got a new question regarding Quick Trip.
Cliff, can you tell us the status of Quick Trip and where it has in the process?
Sure. So I haven't got down to what is the status of Quick Trip.
Mm-hmm.
So Quick Trip is defined as from a planning standpoint, as a convenience store / gas station. And within that general commercial, that's the zoning district where it's being proposed. It was required to go through what we call the conditional use permit process. And that process is there to accommodate those uses that are similar to those that have been predetermined to be permitted by right, but may have a little bit extra of a component that needs to be evaluated to make sure it's not detrimental to the neighborhood and the surrounding parcels. So it goes through that CUP process. So we did have the meeting with the Plan Commission back 2 weeks ago, I believe. And it was for the public hearing and the review of the original application for the establishment of the Quick Trip. It did go through the Plan Commission. They heard all the testimony. They have then made their recommendation to the mayor and council, who will then consider the request during their September 13th meeting. That said, there were a couple conditions that we talked about. Obviously, we want to make sure prior to any approval that there's not any negative impacts based on the traffic. And the initial analysis is saying that it is not, because a convenience store is really not a site destination. It's a convenience along your traditional route. So the logic is that it could most likely will not create any additional traffic along Olive Boulevard. So the short answer is we would expect that it would go to the mayor and council for their review and consideration of the recommendation of the Plan Commission, who recommended approval of the project on September 13th.
Director Cross, there was a new question posted about the fact that Quick Trips do sell alcohol. My understanding is that each business is evaluated on its own merits as it relates to the provision of the alcohol licensing. Is that correct?
That is, and that was actually, something that came up during the Plan Commission meeting, if I recall. And alcohol sales, depending on how your liquor license is approved, is based upon a separate ordinance, and specifically, I believe it's Chapter 610 of the code under the Finance Department that regulates liquor licenses. So even if the Quick Trip is approved, it would have to follow the process of obtaining a liquor license for either their package pour, whatever their choice is of liquor sales, as part of the liquor license review process. So the approval of the Quick Trip does not necessarily say you're getting a liquor license.
Thank you. Let's see if we have any new
Councilmember Clay, real
Yes.
quick, I just wanted to go back and address one thing, and I'm not sure if this was clarified during the meeting so far, and that is the task force or steering committee in reference to the RPA 2 that will be, I guess, decided at the council's retreat.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I think that was, I'm not sure if that was clarified, and there is a distinct difference. There's a difference between the task force being formed by the mayor for the visioning, and there's a difference between that and the RPA2 task force or steering committee in reference to RPA2 and the development and the $3 million. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood there is a difference. Okay.
The visioning task force, I believe, is comprised of people who currently sit on commissions, and council people are selecting folks who already are sitting on our green practices, planning, traffic commissions. And I think each council member gets one selection from that existing pool of people who already serve on commissions. In terms of a new question, about
Yeah, do
the
you want me to read
Oliver
that one? Yeah.
70 project, and the article that was in the Roars regarding the origin. Yeah, I'm not sure how the process for the Roars and how those articles get developed.
The intent, and Gregory, chime in if I'm incorrect, but the intent is that's an ongoing article series of the history of the origins of the project, and then how it's moving along and what it's achieving.
Yeah, I don't know if there will be another article regarding the origins of it, but certainly we intend to continue to keep the community updated as far as how the project is progressing.
There's a question about Kingsland Park and the name change. Was that renamed to Mayor Shelley Welsh Park? Was that Kingsland Park? Yeah, that's done through the name. That was not done through the street renaming task force.
If I could just chime in very briefly, that will be considered by the mayor and council during your meeting on the 13th of September. You have an ordinance that will be brought forward to you for final consideration. So second and third reading that would change the Kingsland Park to the former mayor's name.
And City Manager Rose, and that is, and just to clarify also to that is also initiated by the mayor, correct?
A couple of things. The history of University City has always had the sitting mayor nominate to the council a park for the mayor that came before them, that it would bear their name. And so Mayor Crow is following in that tradition, in the sense that this time though we're trying to take it through a process that the city attorney feels comfortable with.
And one more thing, and just to clarify, that is a third ward issue. The Kingsland Park is a third ward park. So.
Okay. So
there's another specific question. Has it been taken into consideration that there will be 4 service stations from 170 to Hanley, including Costco?
As far as
go ahead, Director Cross.
Economic development, I think that certainly a number of factors were taken into consideration. But not only the number of service stations that exist within University City, but also the fact that we really need to diversify the local economy here because of how your tax structure is set up. So a number of factors went into it. And I believe that's why, Quick Trip is going through the process now, and the mayor and council will make decisions on when they consider the conditional use permit.
And I will add this from my perspective. We do have existing service stations. I think there is at least one that I, and certainly those who live around it, would not be sad to see go out of business. And we believe having something such as a Quick Trip, which has a reputation as a high quality establishment, will put pressure on other establishments to step up their game or exit the market. And again, there's certainly at least one that I know many people who live in an area would not mind seeing go.
And I will simply add to Council Members Clay perspective, and that is that I don't believe that once the Costco gas station is up and running and the Quick Trip is up and running, that we will even see in a couple of years 4 stations on Olive. So that's just simply my perspective.
We have another question that I think might be for Cliff. It's not technically in the 3rd ward, but what's taking the gas station so long to be completed at Olive and Kingsland?
Yeah, so this was a conditional use permit that was approved a couple years back, gone through the permitting process, and gone through all the reviews. My understanding is there's been a little bit of a change that has required a re-review of the engineering. And unfortunately, when it goes for a re-review of the engineering, we have to send it to the county. It takes a little longer to get it done. I did speak with the Public Works Department, Mr. Alplason, who is going to follow up with the county representative to see where we are on that. But long story short, there was some changes in the engineering that constituted a re-review because of its proximity to a county road and county right-of-way that therefore has triggered that. We have been working with the developer to try to make some progress in terms of any of the work with the actual building permit, but they have done a lot of that work and are keeping the permit moving forward. But short answer is it's an engineering re-review and sign off.
Let's see.
Sorry about that.
New questions. We'll give a moment or two for any more new questions. Looks like we have one coming through. And let me kind of address the issue of lots. Certainly in a residential context, we don't need any more empty lots. I believe, and this is my voice, Councilman Smotherson may feel very different as all the panelists on this call. In some cases, I would prefer an empty lot to a business that is problematic. That may not be everyone's opinion, it's mine. Many of the attendees may not agree, but that is my opinion. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case here. And I think with everything that's happening on Olive, I think redevelopment opportunities are ripe. And I do not believe on Olive that an empty lot will be an empty lot long. But again, my voice, not speaking for Councilman Smotherson or anyone else. I think there are circumstances where, yeah, I would rather have an empty lot than a consistently problematic property.
And what I will add to that is that I don't believe that there would be a problem with empty lots any longer. If economic development moves forward and we actually use the advice of the Economic Development Task Force, that won't be a problem. There shouldn't be empty lots with that gas station that exists, I believe, in the 8300 block of Olive or 8400 block. I don't think that that's going to be a problem because the Economic Development Task Force has actually made a plan for that side of Olive. And I think if that's followed, there won't be an empty lot there at all. And again, that's something that is later down the line. But again, I agree. I don't think that you're going to see an empty lot there for long at all.
We have a specific development question, I think, for Cliff. Councilmember Clay, did you want me to read it or do you want to? It's the nursing home one?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So can you discuss the possible development on the lower level of the nursing home on Partridge?
So it's technically not the nursing home that's being focused on to be redeveloped, so to speak. I believe the address is 1301 Partridge, and that is where the nursing home is. So you have the nursing home that's on a lot, and then you have a vacant lot to the west or the rear of the nursing home. So the nursing home is working with a developer to reconfigure those lots to keep the nursing home to the front and then develop a 60-unit senior independent living facility to the rear of the property. And that's what was in their original request for what we call a map amendment to a planned development residential district, so simply rezoning the property. And then they are seeking approval of the concept for the 60-unit senior independent living facility with the amenities. So there's technically will not be touching the front or the existing nursing home, but building a new multi-family senior independent living facility to the west. Now, what I can tell you is this is being looked at in terms of, because traditionally when you get residential developments, the one thing you want to make sure is that there is not a detrimental impact on traffic. So we are coordinating a traffic study that will ultimately go before the Traffic Commission for their review and comment, as well as addressing any potential ingress, egress concerns that the fire department or the police may have to make sure that there are no negative impacts or increased traffic on Partridge.
May I jump in on that discussion? As Director Cross has stated, it's a senior apartment complex is what it is. And I believe it actually is 60 units.
Yes,
is
sir.
That correct? Right.
Yes, sir.
So again, this is senior apartments. They're going to be market rate apartments. And as Mr. Cross stated, it's going through the Traffic Commission and correctly so, because there is an issue about the egress and ingress. And it does have me and also Councilmember Clay worried about access to this the apartment, especially emergency access. So it's being handled correctly. And but again, that is a senior apartment complex, 55 and over.
There is a question I do see about, well, there's two things. One, the residents who live in that area of the proposed senior development, in terms of them having a voice, yes, there's actually mechanisms built in which there have to be public meetings, there have to be other points of access. And Councilman Smothers and I have been in conversation with the developer and ensured that they will have community access points, community conversation points within the development. So that there will be ample opportunity.
And
the other
remember, Clay, as a follow-up, we did send the required public notices out you talked about. This is scheduled to have the public comment and input at the September 13th City Council meeting. So if any residents, want to enter their comments into the record, that's the avenue that they can do that as part of the official minutes.
Yeah, and that's part of the city's process. We spoke to the developer about an additional process of community meetings. Now, in the age of COVID, I don't know exactly what that might look like, but the concept is out there anyway. There's a question about what we do with homes that have fallen into disrepair and have been that way for several years. Director Cross, it may be worthwhile to, if you can speak to our process. We have a derelict home. Folks been calling about it for forever and a day. Can you speak to that process?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, one of the issues, I know Mr. Rose and staff has been looking at is how do we address those chronic nuisance homes, those ones that constantly remain an issue. We mow the grass 10 times, whatever it may be. So one of the issues is that the department through the years became citation happy and thought a citation would take care of the problem. What we've done now has become more proactive in addressing those chronic nuisance issues. And we've reinstated what's called the Nuisance Declaration process. So what that is we actually notify the property owners and all parties of interest of the potential issue. And we seek what we ultimately call a demolition order to demolish the property or abate the issue. And the goal is to either give us the ability to demolish that dilapidated property that's beyond repair, or at the very least, pull out any interested party who fears that action to take action on themselves to address the issue. And we have had some successes in pulling some of the other interest parties out of the woodwork, or people who recently purchased the property and found out that it was in that condition. We've had a couple rehabs, but we have also obtained some demolition orders, and I believe taken down 4 structures to date, and actually we'll be starting on a accessory structure on another one potentially as early as tomorrow. We also are creating a stockpile of those properties that were kind of left behind, and we're conducting monthly hearings where we're working to get approximately 6 orders a month. So we have a stockpile. I think it's probably 25 to 30 properties that we could theoretically move forward with the demolition of that property once we obtain those orders and the appeal process goes. I think the long-term goal is to evaluate those vacant lots once we demolish it as part of a future housing program that then gives us the flexibility to do some sort of, since we did take them down at our cost, traditionally we lien them, foreclose on them, get ownership of them, and then we can ultimately incorporate them into some RFP where we can get some private investment to rebuild homes that could be on the market for sale to residents and stabilize the neighborhoods.
And follow up to that.
So,
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that, and so the lots, just to be clear, the lots then become owned by the city?
If we demolish them and then place a lien on the property, we can foreclose on the lien. The only other way to get a hold of those structures is to go through a receivership process, which takes some time. So we're looking into that option as well to see if we can get it. And those are in the cases where you think the structure might be able to be saved and we can somehow get a hold of it and then work on a housing rehab program for the receivership process. But in terms of the demolitions, once we take it down, 9 out of 10 times, nobody had responded anyway. We ultimately lien it, foreclose on it, get ownership of it, and then we got to get quiet title, and then we can coordinate with a private partner to somehow market those lots or build on those lots in the future.
If I could just add on to what Cliff has stated, I just want the residents to know that our desire really isn't to demolish a home. Our desire is to have the home rehabbed and able to be occupied. It's only really the last results when someone has abandoned the home and refused to make it meet our minimum standards that we perceive through the demolition process. Now, sometimes there are homes that, you kind of scratch your head and say, well, why did they abandon this? And typically those have a mortgage on them by the bank. So we're indifferent to what entity actually rehabs the home, whether it's the bank that technically owns the home or the individual that is paying the mortgage. Our goal is simply to improve the community, the area that the home is in by having that home fixed up. Now, in some instances, it's just not going to make any sense. They just abandon it, and nothing that we do will ever get them to make any improvements to it. And so in those instances, we certainly move forward with demolishing the home. And that's, I think it's also important to note that's a program that's fairly recent, within the past year, that the mayor and council provided funding for demolishing homes.
And there have been a couple of questions about the notification and the documentation that goes into this process. Can you talk a little bit about how, and I know our time is getting away from us, but how the homeowner is notified of the process as the home goes through it?
Yeah, to ensure that everybody, is properly notified, we do a series of searches and notifications. The first one is for the pre-hearing, hearing, and post-hearing order process. We do a publishing in the Countian. So anybody who reads the Countian can be aware of that. The other thing is we do research in the GIS and our system to make sure we're not missing somebody. That said, sometimes recordings don't happen, or they may not be updated as quickly. So we actually do title reports to identify all parties of interest. And then we mail a notification to all parties of interest. I think probably Keith Cole in the finance department gets tired of getting his notice for the outstanding sewer bills, but we notify ourselves, to be honest, just to make sure we comply with the process. So ultimately, traditionally, it's the most recent owner of record. It's a bank if there's a mortgage. Occasionally, you'll get a homeowners association because they got some sort of recording or lien on the property. MSD for outstanding sewer bills, the city for an outstanding trash bill, and sometimes St. Louis County for outstanding tax bills. So we do a title report as well to make sure we try to reach everybody who has interest in the property and not necessarily just the owner or the bank.
Cliff, as I understand it, state statutes really govern the process. And so those that are interested in what the process is, they would have to go to the state statute and read through that. But that really outlines the process that whether it's the city or any other government agency has to go through to demolish a home. That's a very serious issue. If you're anytime you're taking someone's property,
Right.
The state will want to ensure that you have gone through a very rigorous process to allow every opportunity for the property owner to retain that property.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
And I know there's been curiosity, my own included, about that process. What I will commit to doing is sending out links to both our city ordinances and the state statutes I'll do that through the newsletter mechanism that I use. I'm not going to do a whole newsletter around that, but I will send it up as a follow-up to this meeting. So that won't go out till next week. I want to be clear. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Okay, we are, I think, about at time. Councilman Smolison, did you have any closing remarks?
No, I appreciate everybody attending the meeting. I do want to answer one question that I don't think has been addressed, and that is, I think Pete's Market will sustain the addition of Costco, simply because I think it fits into that certain niche in that market, and I think that they will actually still be around and function and still be right there at Hanley and Olive. So if that answers the question, now that's just my personal opinion, but I think that they will be around. Other than that, I appreciate everybody being here. I thank the city manager and Director Cross and Gabby for assisting with this meeting, and look forward to all of the things that are happening in the third ward, and we'll talk about that in more detailed terms, and hopefully later down the line in more personal terms. So thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you.